Assalamu alaikum girls, I am Miss Saima Khan and today we will have the fourth lecture about gases. I was very happy to see that some of you have asked very good questions. Well done and keep it up. The ones who have not asked any question, they should also participate so that they should learn more. Now coming up to the lecture, before we start the lecture, if you just remember that previously we have done the gas laws, which were Charles' law, Boyle's law, Gay-Lussac law, and Avogadro's law. We combined all these four laws and we have derived ideal gas equation, which was PV is equal to nRT. Then we said that real gases deviate from their ideality over there, and we have discussed that deviation. Van der Waals gave the new equation and corrected the ideal gas equation, which was for the correction of pressure and volume. Now we will start the next lecture and two laws are left. First, we will start with the first one, which is Dalton's law of partial pressure. If you remember, I told you girls that always remember that you have to first of all concentrate on the words whatever we are using, such as partial pressure. Partial pressure means that to some extent the pressure exerted. It won't be the total pressure whatever that container will be having, or whatever that all those gases will be imparting pressure. They will not be the total pressure. Each individual gas will have its partial or to some extent pressure. The name is Dalton's law. It means that Dalton must have given this law, which is known as partial pressure. If we just say that we have a container with us in which we have different gases kept, whenever we are introducing those different gases, suppose say A, B, C, D, any those number of gases are over there, we have to be very careful and make sure that those gases do not react with each other. If they do react, then definitely the individual gas about which we are talking about will not exist. Such as, suppose say that we have a container in which we have introduced ammonia, NH3, and we have introduced HCl gas, hydrochloric acid gas. They both are, when kept in a container, will react together and will form ammonium chloride, NH4Cl, and it will also be in the gaseous form, that is white dense fumes of ammonium chloride will be formed. So as such, the gas which we have introduced, that is ammonia and HCl, doesn't exist. So it is must that when we are introducing these gases, they should not react with each other. That is, it is applicable to only non-reacting gases, such as if we take example of air. In air, there are so many gases present, or we can say that it is a mixture of gases. Mainly which gases are present, such as nitrogen, and its percentage is 78%. Similarly, oxygen 21%. Argon is 0.93%. Carbon dioxide is 0.03%. With other trace gases such as neon, helium, krypton, hydrogen, and along with these, water vapors and pollutants are also present. All this is very important, girls, because they can ask you in exams, either in your short questions or even in your objectives. They can ask you different percentages. They can give you different options for the percentages, or they can ask you that it is applicable to which type of gases? To non-reacting gases. So all this is very important. Now, what is Dalton's law of partial pressure? It is that we have already discussed that if we have 2, 3, whatever that number of gases may be, when we combine all the individual pressures, it gives us the total pressure. That is, partial pressure combines to give us a total pressure. Or we can say total pressure exerted by a gaseous mixture is equal to the sum of partial pressure of each gas present in a mixture. That is, if we just write it in an equation form, we can write it as PT. This T stands for total pressure, and PA plus PB plus PC and so on. A, B, C are any of the gases. Particularly, we have not named them that it is nitrogen or oxygen or any gas. Otherwise, we can just write it as combined that A, B, C and so on. So Dalton's law of partial pressure means that to some extent each gas will exert its pressure on the walls of the container and will have a total combination of all these will give you the total pressure. Now, what is the relationship between pressure and the number of moles of the gas? This is also very important short question. Mostly it comes that explain the relationship between the pressure and number of moles, or they ask you that derive the relationship between pressure and number of moles. Girls, when I'm telling you that this thing is important, you should mark all these things in your books so that when you are doing preparation for your exams, then you will see that important is written. It means that you have to practice it more and more of this particular slide or of that particular content, whatever is over there. Now, suppose say that we have different gases A, B, C. Particularly, we have not mentioned any name over there. Any general gas A, B, C having different number of moles. That is Na, Nb and Nc are the number of moles, and they have their own pressure. That is Pa, Pb and Pc. We know general gas equation as PV is equal to nRT. Now, if we apply this general gas equation or ideal gas equation to each and every gas A, B, C, the equation changes, such as it becomes that pressure will be of that one single gas, that is Pa. Volume, total container volume will remain the same. That is, it is a constant. But number of moles can vary. R is another constant and T is also a constant. So, for gas A, we can say that PAV is equal to NART, leaving PA to one side and taking all the other things to the other side. We get the equation as PA is equal to NART by V. Similarly, for gas B and C, the same type of equations will be written. That is, for B, it will be PBV is equal to NBRT. And if we just leave PB over there, we get as PB is equal to NBRT by V. Similarly, for gas C, PCV is equal to NCRT, or PC is equal to NCRT by V. All these are particular A, B and C. Now suppose say that we are generalizing it and saying that for all gases, then the equation changes to PT, that is total number of pressure whatever is over there for all the gases. PTV is equal to NTRT, or PT is equal to NTRT by V. This is equation 4. Now, if we just divide equation 1 by equation 4, that is PA is equal to NART by V, and PT is equal to NTRT by V. So, both of them have just changed their positions, because if we just divide it, it becomes up over there. And taking the things common, volume can be cancelled, temperature can be cancelled, R can be cancelled. Now what is left behind? It is PA by PT is equal to NA by ND. Leaving PA to one side, we get as NA into PT by ND, or simply you can say that PA is directly proportional to number of moles of that gas, whatever is present. This is the main equation which is derived. Similarly, for other gases, such as for B, it will be PB is directly proportional to number of moles of B, as well as PC is directly proportional to number of moles of C. In general, we can just generalize all these equations and say it as that partial pressure of any gas is equal to number of moles of that gas into total pressure divided by total number of moles of that gas. That is, PA is equal to NA into PT by ND. This equation is very important from your exam point of view, so you have to learn it. Next comes as relationship between pressure and mole fraction of a gas. Mole fraction word can help us that it won't be full one value over there, such as 1, 2, 3, not like that. It will be fraction, that is, it will be in point some value over there. Now what is this? It is that it is just similar to that of the previous equation, that is partial pressure of any gas divided by total pressure of all the gases is equal to number of moles of that gas divided by total number of moles of all the gases. Or we can say that it is PI, that is, now we have taken it as a generalized equation. For any gas we have written it as I, that is PI, but for all the gases total pressure will be PT, that is PI by PT is equal to Ni, that is number of moles of that particular gas, divided by total number of moles, that is NT. Leaving Pi over there and taking PT to the other side, we get it as Pi is equal to Ni into PT by NT. Now if we just simply take the number of moles, individual as well as a total one, that is Ni by NT, it is equal to Xi. And what is this Xi stands for? It is mole fraction of the component. Component means that we don't know how many gases are over there. 1, 2, 3, whatever that number would be. But we are just saying that it is any one of the gas. So we have taken it as 1, or we can say that mole fraction of that component. We can change this upper equation to Pi is equal to Xi into PT. This is another very important equation which can be asked in your exams, or they can ask you that give the relationship between pressure and mole fraction, or they can ask you that derive the equation between mole fraction and partial pressure. So same one thing can be asked in so many different ways. Main thing to tell you is that you have to learn all these things, and learning means you have to practice them. Now partial pressure applications are also over there. So we will study one by one what are the applications. These applications are also important from your long question point of view, as well as if we just take individual one application, that is also very important from your exam point of view. So applications of partial pressure law. First application is collection of gases over water. It means that gases, whatever are over there, they have to be collected. Either we can collect them directly, as such, take a container and put them and you will get it. Or there is another method. So we can say that gases can be collected by two different methods. That is, they can be lighter gases, it can be heavier gas. If a gas is lighter, different procedure is adopted. But if a gas is heavier, simple procedure is adopted. Now all this, whatever I will be telling you, you have to just assume that you have a flask. Say that either you have a flat bottom flask or say that you have a round bottom flask. You must have seen this in your labs over there in your metric. So if we just take a flat bottom flask and we make any gas, such as suppose say you are producing carbon dioxide gas, just through the delivery tube, one end of it will be placed in the flask, while the other will be placed in the apparatus in which you have to collect it, such as if you want to collect it in a cylinder. Other end of the delivery tube will be placed in the cylinder over there. Gas is heavier, so it will move down and will push all the air out. You can very easily collect it. But this is very easy for heavier gases. But suppose say that the gas is lighter, then the same procedure cannot be adopted, because if it is lighter, if you just pass it in the cylinder, it will just come out over there. So different procedure has to be adopted. For those gases, we have to pass them under water. But one very important thing which we have to take care is that gas should not be soluble in water. Such as, suppose say that you are passing HCl gas through water. So what will happen? That water will become acidic, and as such proper HCl, whatever amount of the gas you are making, that cannot be collected. Or say that you are collecting ammonia gas under water. The solution will become ammonium hydroxide, a basic solution. So it is must that when you are collecting the gases, they should not be soluble in water, or it is just written it over there that it is applicable only to insoluble gases in water. Now what do we do is that we take that container in which we have to collect the gas, we just invert it and place it on water with a beehive's shell and then bubble the gas through it. All the water, whatever will be present in the cylinder, will come out and your cylinder will be filled with the gas. But when we are passing the gas through water, one of the drawback is that water vapors can also be collected along with that gas which we are collecting. So the pressure which we will be getting will not be only that of the gas which we want to collect, but it will be the total pressure which we are getting will be, that is P total, will be equal to pressure of that gas which we are collecting plus pressure of water vapors which are present over there. But if we want to write, or if we want to calculate only the pressure of that gas, then it will be pressure of that gas is equal to the total pressure minus pressure of water vapors. Pressure of water vapors is also known as aqueous tension. So it means that the gas which you have collected in the cylinder is not only that gas, it is along with that gas you have water vapors also present with you. So that gas which is collected along with water vapors is also known as moist gas. That is, it is not pure dry gas, it is a moist gas. Putting it in this equation, if water vapor's pressure is given, we can calculate the pressure of the gas. So this is one of the very important application over there. Second application which is there is respiration at higher altitudes. What is meant by respiration? Respiration basically means intake of oxygen and giving out carbon dioxide. Have you girls ever thought that why do we only intake oxygen and give out carbon dioxide? Why don't we intake carbon dioxide? Basically, it follows this partial pressure law, in which we say that whatever the concentration of the gas is outside, that is outside means not in the body, in the air, and the concentration of oxygen gas inside the lungs is not same. There is difference over there. That is, partial pressure of oxygen in air is 159 grams per centimeter square. But if we take the concentration of oxygen in the lungs, it is 116, that is 116 grams per centimeter square. If we just see the difference in these two, higher concentration of oxygen is in the air, that is outside the body, and lower concentration of oxygen is inside the lungs, that is it is 116. So from higher concentration to lower concentration, the gases move. So oxygen moves inside the lungs, but the concentration of carbon dioxide inside the lungs is very high. Outside it is low, so it moves out. Girls, these values are very important from your objective point of view. They can ask you about the partial pressure of oxygen either in air or in lungs. Now, partial pressure of oxygen at higher altitudes is 150 grams per centimeter square. That is, as we move up and up at higher altitudes, pressure decreases. If pressure of oxygen in the air decreases, inside the body it remains the same, that is lung capacity is 116. But outside, now there is a decrease in the pressure, so intake of oxygen will be little difficult. That's why pilots feel uncomfortable at higher altitudes as compared to when they are at the ground state. This can be one of the questions in your short questions, that why pilots feel uncomfortable while taking in oxygen at higher altitudes. So, or they can even ask you that what is explain respiration at higher altitudes. All these values are very important from your exam point of view. So we have done two applications. Third one is respiration by deep sea divers. At higher altitudes, we have just discussed now that pressure decreases. But if we take sea, the depth of every 40 meters increases the pressure of air by 5 times more than the normal one. And what is the normal? Normal is 159. And if we increase it by 5 times for every 40 meters, it becomes as 795. That is, so high pressure is present over there. So intake of pure oxygen will be really very difficult. So what they do is that they try to mix the oxygen with the gas which has more concentration or more percentage than oxygen, so that there isn't any problem in intaking that oxygen. That's why scuba divers use a mixture of oxygen in their respiration tank, that is helium and oxygen. Concentration of helium is more, which is 96%, and that of oxygen is 4%. This combination or this mixture of helium with oxygen is also known as heliox, that is helium and oxygen. It is mostly used in the hospitals for the asthmatic patients so that they can intake oxygen easily. Now, if a person is deep in the sea and it has taken in air, this mixture of air, it would be just okay. But the moment they come out very quickly, they may face certain problems. And for that reason, they have to do surfacing. What is meant by surfacing? That they should come very slowly so that their lungs pressure is not hurt over there, or lungs are not affected over there. For this reason, they have to move slowly and slowly. They may take hours for moving up out of the sea so that their lungs should not be damaged. This is one of the very, very, very important and favorite question of the examiners which they ask. Next is, how deep sea divers respire on return from the sea. If we just simply say that the divers only take pure oxygen with them, in pure oxygen, nitrogen concentration is more as compared to oxygen. So nitrogen is then intaken in more amount as compared to oxygen, because solubility of nitrogen in blood increases by increase in the pressure, which is 5 times more by every 40 meters. So when they are returning back to the surface over there, they find certain bends produced on the body. What is meant by this bend? That they have in their capillaries swell up and they have blood present in them. When they come out quickly, all those bends may burst out and bleeding may start. So for deep sea divers, it is must that they should use a mixture, as well as when they come out, they should do surfacing, that is come slowly. Otherwise their body as well as lungs pressure will be increased and they may be damaged. Next, there is an example over there that if we have 1 mole of nitrogen and 3 moles of hydrogen enclosed in a container of volume, what is the volume? 10 decimeter cube at 298 Kelvin. What are the partial pressures and total pressure? So we can just first of all add the number of moles, that is that of nitrogen, which is 1, and that of hydrogen, which is 3. So total number of moles, that is NT, will be equal to 1 plus 3 is equal to 4 moles. Volume is given to us, which is 10 decimeter cube. Temperature is given. R, I have told you earlier to learn it, that now the R which we are going to use is 0.082 decimeter cube atmosphere per Kelvin per mole. Units are very important to write with all of them. Putting in the equation, PTV is equal to NTRT. So PT will be equal to NTRT by V, and we get the total pressure as 9.77 atmosphere. They have asked the total pressure as well as the partial pressure. Now partial pressure for nitrogen, that is PN2, will be equal to N2, that is number of moles of nitrogen gas, divided by total number of moles, that is NT, into PT. So the value comes to be 2.44 atmosphere. Similarly for hydrogen, if we just put all the values, it becomes to be 7.33. To just check whether the total pressure is correct or not, or these individual partial pressures are correct or not, just add these individual partial pressures and you will see that it is just equal to the total pressure. In this way, you can counter check your answers also. Next is example 4.18. A certain mass of hydrogen gas collected over water at 6 degrees centigrade and 765 millimeter of mercury pressure occupied a volume of 35 centimeter cube. Calculate its dry volume at STP. Now they have mentioned dry volume. It means, if you remember, we have just already said that whenever we are collecting any gas over water, along with that gas, there are certain water vapors also present. So pressure will not be only of that gas, rather than water vapors pressure will also be present. Particularly over here in brackets, they have given you water vapor pressure, that is vapor pressure of water at 6 degrees is 7 millimeter of mercury. They have given it over here, but mostly in exams they don't give. You have to learn this, that at 6 degrees, 7 millimeter of vapor pressure is that of waters. Now for the solution, the temperature is given. Again, we have to convert it into Kelvins. STP, standard temperature and pressure, they have given. And volume they have given. Other volume we have to calculate. Pressure, the first pressure which they have given is that of the gas, that is 765. Now from that gas you have to subtract that of water vapors, which is 7. So the leftover pressure will be that only of hydrogen gas. Putting in this equation, P1 V1 by T1 is equal to P2 V2 by T2, and we get the volume as 34.2 centimeter cube. Next is diffusion. Diffusion is basically random movement of gas particles from higher concentration to lower concentration is called diffusion. It's not necessary that it is only of the gases. It can be of any substance. It can be liquids or anything like that. Random movement, if you remember, in the very first lecture, I told you random movement is also known as Brownian movement. Because the gases don't move in straight line. They collide with each other, move in all the possible directions. So from higher concentration to lower concentration, such as fragrance of rose. If rose is kept in one of the corner of the room, only in that room the smell isn't over there, rather than it is throughout that room in which it is kept. So it means that from that one place, it is moving to all the other place, whatever is available. That is from higher concentration to lower concentration. Similarly, if we take ammonia gas, NH3, and HCl gas is reacted with it, or it is close over there, we will get a white dense fumes of ammonium chloride. Girls, just see that white dense fumes, I have written it. It means they can ask you in your objectives that ammonium chloride, if it is in the gaseous state, what will be the color? It will be white fumes will be produced. Similarly, bromine gas is brownish in color. If we just take a cylinder in which we have bromine gas, and to that cylinder, if we just invert an empty cylinder above this bromine gas cylinder, after some time we will see that from the lower cylinder the gas has moved up. How is it possible that we are able to see? Because the color of the gas is brown, which is now spread in both the cylinders. So we are able to see that from higher concentration to lower concentration, the gas, bromine gas, has moved and now it has filled both the cylinders. Liquid ink. Just take water in a glass or in a beaker and just drop one drop of ink in it. After some time, you will see that all that water which is present becomes of that ink color. Suppose that you have introduced a blue color. At the start, it will be only at one place, but with the passage of time, it spreads throughout that container in which it is kept, and all that water becomes light blue in color. It means that from higher concentration to lower concentration, ink has moved. Another thing which you should be knowing is effusion. What is effusion? Movement of gaseous molecules through extremely small pore in a region of low pressure is known as effusion. Small pore, if is used, then it will be known as effusion. But if no small pore is present, rather than it is an open place for its movement, it will be known as diffusion. So there is difference between effusion and diffusion. They can ask you in your short questions that what is the difference between effusion and diffusion. Remember that for this thing, whenever differences are asked, try to make two columns and then write the points whatever are similar or dissimilar to them. First of all, just write their definitions, and after second can be that you can tell that for effusion, a small pore is must, but for diffusion, it is not necessary to have a small pore. It can be a wide area in which from higher concentration to lower concentration things can move. Last law which we are going to study is Graham's law. Definitely it means that Graham must have given this law, and it is related to this diffusion and effusion, or you can say diffusion or effusion. Now what is this law? It is rate of diffusion or effusion of a gas is inversely proportional to the square root of its density or molar mass. Now it is rate of diffusion. What is meant by rate? Rate is the speed or velocity, you can say. That is movement of the gas particles, with what speed they are moving or with what velocity they are moving. They are saying that it is inversely proportional to the square root of density or molar mass. Relationship between density and molar mass is that both of them are directly proportional. That is, heavier the mass, molar mass, greater will be its density. So for writing the equation, we can say that R, which is rate, is inversely proportional to the under root of density. Or if we just put it in an equality form, we can say that R is equal to K by under root D. Or we can, if we just put it in molecular mass or molar mass equation, we can say that rate is inversely proportional to under root of molar mass, or rate is equal to constant by molar mass. Now over here we can just assume that if we have higher molar mass or a bigger molar mass as compared to a smaller one, such as suppose say that you have chlorine and you have hydrogen gas. Definitely chlorine molar mass is very larger and that of hydrogen is smaller. So hydrogen will move more quickly as compared to the one which is having heavier molar mass or is having higher density. So that's why there is an inverse relationship between density or molar mass along with that of their speed or velocity or rate over there. Now suppose we say that we have two gases, that is R1, then its rate will be R1 is equal to K by under root D1, and another is that R2 is equal to K by under root D2. Dividing these equations we get as R1 by R2 is equal to K by under root D1 into K, and D2 has moved up over there. K are constant, so we can just cut them. So what is left behind? R1 by R2 is equal to under root D2 by under root D1. Instead of taking densities over there, if we just take their molar masses, it becomes as R1 by R2 is equal to under root M2 by M1. This is very important. They can ask you that derive the molar mass or density related to Gram's law of diffusion or effusion. Now there is an example that equal volumes of HCl and sulfur dioxide are confined in a porous container. What would be the comparative rates of diffusion of these gases through the porous walls? They have given the molar masses, but mostly in exams they don't give. So it is must that you should learn for the common ones. HCl molar mass is 36.5 and that of sulfur dioxide is 64. Now from these molar masses, you can even tell that which will move slowly and which will move faster. So definitely HCl has smaller molar mass, so it will move more quickly as compared to sulfur dioxide, which has 64 or higher. Putting it in these equations over there, we can just say that if we have molar mass of HCl as M1 and molar mass of sulfur dioxide as M2, rates can be determined very easily. That is R1 by R2 is equal to M2 by M1 under root. Putting the values, and we get as that HCl will be moving 1.33 times faster than that of sulfur dioxide, which will be moving with one speed over there. So if no values are given, simple statement is written. Putting their molar masses, we can find out that which gas will be moving faster and which will be slower. Next is that if 280 centimeter cube of hydrogen gas diffuses in 40 seconds, how long will it take for 90 centimeter of gas, an unknown gas? That's why they have written it as X, where vapor density is 25. They have given the vapor density of that unknown gas as 25 to diffuse under the same conditions. Molar mass they have written for hydrogen is 2, and they have given a hint that if you want to calculate the molar mass of any unknown gas, it is very easy. That just simply multiply the vapor density of that any unknown gas with 2, you will get the molar mass of that unknown gas. This thing they have written it over here, hint, but in exams they don't write or they don't give this hint. They will just simply write the equation to you girls. So for the solution, first of all we will find for that of hydrogen that what is the rate with which it is moving. That velocity is given, molar mass is given, and time is given. Or we can say that rate of diffusion is equal to velocity by time. velocity is given, and by time the answer comes to be 7 centimeter cube per second. That hydrogen will move in this 280 centimeter cube with 7 centimeter cube per second. Now for the unknown, volume is given, but molar mass wasn't given, but they have given the hint that molar mass is equal to 2 into 25, and we get it as 50. Time is not given, and for calculating the rate, that is velocity by time, if we just put it, the equation comes to be 490 by T2 centimeter cube per second. If we just put it in equation that R1 by R2, we know that what is our R1, which is equal to 7, and what is R2? It is 490 by T2. So this T2 will move up over there, and we will get a new equation which is 7 into T2 by 490. Similarly, if we just put it in their molar masses, we can say that R1 by R2 is equal to M2 by M1 under root, and 50 by 2 we get as 25 by 1 under root. And by comparing these two equations, R1, that is first one in which we are taking their velocities, and the second one in which we are taking their molar masses, then the equation comes to be 7 into T2 by 490 is equal to 25 by 1 under root. So T2 or time comes to be 350 seconds. I hope so that it is clear. Now this is the self-check which you girls have to do. And I hope so that the previous self-checks are also done, but no one has sent any home task to me. Kindly send it in time so that I can mark it. Thank you, girls.